You personally cannot purchase mastery. It has to take however long it takes. And that's what makes it so incredibly rare and so incredibly valuable, because it cannot be truncated.
There was a lot of days where when I made it home at night, my win for the day was I was sober that day. I went to bed sober. That was the only win I had.
You will trade either time, money, and probably a combination of the two to gain mastery.
No matter what life throws at you, because it's going to, stay disciplined, stay the process, trust God. You'll achieve things you didn't think you could possibly achieve.
Hey, what's up, Waste No Day fans? It's about time for us to bring a technician back on the show, and we are super excited to have Zach Reynolds join us today. Tennessee man, transitioned to Las Vegas. We're going to hear about that story and so much more about a selling career, $4 million plus, and he's aiming for more. It's great to have you on the show. Welcome here, Zach.
And thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being here, buddy. It's a short window for you to rest between Wiser Wednesday, 5 days ago?
Yeah.
And then
enough to
bam,
let the nerves,
right into Waste No Day.
Yeah. Yeah, enough to let the nerves kind of conjure up and dump right again.
Yeah, you did it. You did a great job on Wiser. I really enjoyed it. The feedback I got, like I told you, Nate didn't hear it, so we'll explain it for Nate's sake. But very real, very humble. Really seems to know what he's talking about. Clearly has put a lot into his relatively short career in sales, but really knows the game. And everybody enjoyed it. So a Waste No Day episode was inevitable. So thanks for being here, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, Zach, you mentioned before we got started on the recording that you are sitting in a brand new home as of yesterday, and it looks lovely. You're sitting outside, which I'm super jealous of, because if I was sitting outside, I'd be wearing a parka right now and dealing with some snow. You are sitting outside a lovely evening in Las Vegas, but of course you're Tennessee born. So I want to start there. Congrats on the home. But I want to hear the story about how you got into the trades and how you went from Tennessee to Vegas, which, gotta say, that's probably not a common travel trajectory, but let's hear more.
So yeah, born and raised in Tennessee. 17, joined the military right out of high school. Went in the Army, was in the infantry, nothing fancy there, just a ground pounder. Got out, went back home. This was 2015-ish, and just had a bad drinking problem, just to be honest about it, and kind of just bounced around. I built homes for a while, roofed for a couple years, just did a little bit of everything, just trying to find my way and till I wore out my welcome somewhere. And I 2018, I came out to Vegas to a veterans treatment center to get sober, and yeah, so I that was 2018. I stayed sober for a little bit. Then 2023 is when I got out here, or when I finally pulled my head out of my rear end, and I got hired. A buddy of mine who I knew from the program was like, "Hey, why don't you come work for me?" He's a journeyman plumber, and he's like, "Come dig for me. It's be a good trade for you. You'll learn." So I initially went in to do plumbing, and was making $13 an hour digging ditches.
I thought you said this is after you pulled your head out of your rear. You left plumbing and put it back in.
Yeah, pretty much. No, so I did that, and then this small company here in Vegas. I got to hanging around the HVAC guys, and I guess they liked what they seen. And they're like, "Well, actually, we're gonna make him kind of dual purpose. We'll make him an apprentice for both." And so I pretty much would go do an install, AC install, get out of an attic after spending 6, 7 hours in there, and it's like, "All right, go dig this water main." And I can't tell you how many times I quit mentally. I was like, "Screw this, dude! $13 an hour, like, you're crazy." But if it wasn't for the guys that were teaching me, not in a boastful way, but like showing me what they made on their paychecks, and they're like, "Dude, just stick with this. It gets better on the other side." So yeah, that's kind of how I got out here and how I got started in the trades.
That's amazing. Did you find that any of your military training or kind of like the discipline the military tends to drive into people kept you engaged in, through slugging it out in the attics and the ditches?
100%, yeah, because so if anybody's military that's listening or army and they happen to be infantry too, then you know that when you're in the infantry, they will tell you there's the army and then there's this 1% of the 1% is infantry, and they'll tell you you're better than everybody. Like point, they used to tell us point and laugh. If they weren't infantry, point and laugh, they suck. So I kind of had this chip on my shoulder that once I started, I felt like I had a lot to prove, and a lot to make up for, a lot of lost time because I was 28 at the time. So I felt like I had a lot of time to make up for. So I just kind of put my head down and high speed, low drag, as they used to say.
Hmm. And Zach, were you always kind of handy or, I mean, you bounced around in through different trades and I imagine in and out of other various jobs like that, but did that always come natural to you or did you, have somebody teach that to you along the way?
Um, I had a stepdad that was very old school. Um, he was military, police officer, grew up on a farm. So, I mean, I learned about hard work at a young age and just he was one of those that if I went to ask a question, he'd be like, "If you'd shut up and pay attention, you'll get your answer. So don't ask questions. Don't ask stupid questions." Is pretty much his methodology. So it was go figure it out, and that's kind of he would aggressively tell me how to not do something, but wouldn't really show me how to do it. He would just let me kind of piece it together. So over time, it got to where it just kind of through trial and error, I learned how to do things the right way.
Hmm. So you're digging ditches, you're sweating it out in the attics, putting in long hours, not making a ton of money, but then you have this glimmer of hope through some other coworkers or people in the trades showing you their paycheck or kind of talking about the money that can be made. How did you exactly decide to like stick it out? I mean, was it about the money or did you see anything, career-wise that you were seeking as well?
I felt that it provided me a sense of purpose because there's so, you show up to a home and either they have no water or it's been some sort of a catastrophe, remediation's been there, or it's 99 degrees in the house. By the time you're done doing your job, they're happy. And I'm a bit of a people pleaser, so I feel like I enjoyed getting to go out of my way to help people. Aside from, yeah, of course, there's monetary benefits, but to me, I found something that there's so many levels to it before you can claim mastery. And I feel like even then, define mastery because like there's always things that are changing and improving. So it's always giving me the ability to kind of work on myself and improve myself, um, and provide a future for my family, which is something that, my wife and my one daughter at the time was number one priority for me. So whatever I had to do to make it work, that's what I was going to do.
Yeah, I like how you use that word mastery. I was doing some writing for a future podcast and researching, what are the things that essentially money can't buy, that can't be shortened on a timeline. Mastery is one of them. Like you cannot purchase mastery. I mean, you can purchase
Hmm.
somebody else who has mastery, like you can
Hmm.
buy their services, but you personally cannot purchase mastery. It has to take
Hmm.
however long it takes. And that's what makes it so incredibly rare and so incredibly valuable because it cannot be truncated. It cannot be, yeah, muscles is another thing. Now, I mean,
Yeah.
but like you can cheat muscles, like you can do things that
Speed it
significantly
up.
shorten the timeline,
Yeah, but
but
you can't.
you
Well,
can't
it's
cheat
like
mastery.
Sam
Yeah.
Sulek says all the time. I love that quote by him. He's like, if you have biceps, you earn them to some degree. Like, doesn't matter what you take, you can't lay on the couch
Yeah.
eating whatever you want and grow biceps. You have to work for them at some level and mastery. Yeah, 100% the same way. And you can trade money to shorten the time, right? Or you can trade time to shorten the money you spend on mastery. So you can hire a tutor, get a course, join a best practice group. We're just hinting toward blue collar closer here. If you guys aren't picking up on it, that's all we're doing. That's all we're doing right now. So you can do all these things to shorten the window up, but you will trade either time, money, and probably a combination of the two to gain mastery, right? And mostly it's going to be time. You have to put in a lot of effort to master anything.
Yeah, sweat equity.
100%, Zach, and kind of getting back to your story there. So you're in the ditch, you see that hope, like what gave you a break, or how did you find yourself progressing through the trade elevator?
I feel like there was my whole life God has placed people in my path that normally, from what I've gathered talking to other people, normally aren't placed in their paths.
Hmm.
And I've just been fortunate that way that I had people that really believed in me that I looked up to, that were exceptional plumbers, exceptional HVAC installers, technicians. Um, they were like, dude, you've got it. Just stick with it. And I guess they believing their belief in me before I had believed in myself.
Hmm.
Um, and that's not something that's totally stereotypical of the trades. Usually it's what you hear, the boogeyman stories, if you will, of like Joe Blow that's super hard on you and won't, but I had people that really poured a lot of time and effort into me and would not let me take a shortcut. Um, there was no, like, I didn't get a chip and hammer with a spade bit till almost like 9 months. It was a pickaxe and a shovel. And if you've ever dug in Vegas, um,
It's good times.
you're and then on top of that, I was going to the gym in the morning. So, I was like, oh, do
Yeah.
leg day and then I got to go dig a ditch.
You got rocks, caliche, granite. Like Vegas is a fun dig.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So roots, palm roots, I get a sawzall out. But yeah, no, having people kind of speak life into me that I didn't necessarily feel at the time for myself. So that's kind of what provided a glimmer of hope for me.
So then did you like kind of work your way out of the ditch, or was there somebody who said like, hey, why don't you hop in my service truck and do some ride-alongs, or what did the next step look like?
Yeah, so I would work Saturdays with my friend Danny Lloyd, who's a phenomenal plumber. Um, I would just ride with him and I'd watch his process. And there was another guy, Brandon Billieu, who same thing. And I got to ride with some people that were really good at multi-million dollar producers that I kind of took bits and pieces from all of them. And I've always been kind of a talker. Because where I'm from, we'll talk to a fence post. We don't meet a stranger. So, like while they were working, I would kind of small talk with the homeowners, and I kind of got to where I'd pick up on cues where they would pause and I pause. I'm not gonna keep talking, and just really watching and molding myself how they did things, and just getting little glimpses of opportunities to run. Like I got a running toilet call. Everyone's tied up. Zach, you want to run it? I was like, yes, it's my time to shine, baby. So just little breadcrumbs of opportunity, I guess you could say, to kind of build my confidence.
And so at that time, were you kind of still dual trading, or did you start making a shift in one direction or the other?
Um, it got to where, because I started February of 23, no, March of 23. Um, so we're right at the 3 year mark. So once it started picking up and getting hotter, um, 2023 was kind of a whatever summer. So I was primarily plumbing, doing some HVAC, running a lot of maintenances that I had no clue how to run. You go up there and jump R and W and sit on the catwalk for 20 minutes and scroll TikTok or whatever, and it's like, all right, system's done. Looks good. Looks good from my house, and going about my business.
Sounds like a
Um,
lot of people running maintenance calls
yeah,
today.
yeah, and you don't know what you don't know. But yeah, no, and then I slowly started transitioning more into HVAC. Probably March, April of 24 was when I kind of pulled back from plumbing because February of 24 is when I went full commission, February 1st. I just had the memory pop on my Facebook a few weeks back. Um, and then I hit the ground running on plumbing because I was still hourly for HVAC, but I'd get commission for plumbing. So there was a small portion of time where plumbing was my bread and butter, and I was happy to sell water mains and tanklesses and twin systems and stuff like that.
Hmm. So that is an interesting trajectory, and the jump into full commission a year after you really even started in the trades is certainly one of faith, I would imagine. Now, I guess you kind of did have some backup on the hourly on the HVAC side to give you some supplemental income there, but you still had to step into that plumbing piece with the concept of full commission. Not every state can even do that, but Vegas and Nevada is one of them where you can be fully commissioned as an actual plumber. So what was kind of like your process in determining, hey, this is worth the risk? I mean, there had to be some level of fear, I would think. Uh, you've run a couple service calls, you've done some stuff here and there where it fit in, but to fully step into a commission role and, basically throw yourself out there hours for free, so to speak, and you eat what you kill, that's not a small thing. So, what was your state of mind when you decided this is what I'm going to do? I'm going to jump in.
Um, well, like most anything in my life, I hem-hawed around with it for a couple months. A big part of my story, my life, and still to this day is God. Um,
Hmm.
and the things that I've done and been through and was able to still be here on top of a miracle in and of itself was getting sober. I never thought
Yeah.
I'd be able to quit drinking.
Wow.
And a really close friend of mine told me, God didn't bring you this far to bring you this far. He didn't build you up to just drop you off. He loves you. He wants you to be successful. And so it really was a leap of faith, quite literally, because you know, thy will be done, not mine. All right, God, you led me to this. Give me the courage to make this leap. And I did. The owner of the company I work for was like, look, dude, you're going to kill it. But if you don't, I'll pay you your 40-hour a week for the weeks you do it until you decide you want to quit. But he said, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, that's not going to happen. And he was right. I took a leap of faith, and God did what God has always done, and He provided.
I love that, Zach. And you've obviously been able to find success in that in 2025. You had a $4 million sales year, which is phenomenal. And I'm sure you're going to be building upon that this year. And that's really what we want to get into the meat of the topic today. I love the foundation of your story and hearing that background. But to transition that into, the guys listening in the truck right now, driving to their call, I love hearing the fact that you're not this silver spoon salesman who you grew up in a sales environment. You got the Tennessee drawl going on, and you're in a very competitive market, and you're winning, and you're doing great things. And that's so exciting, and I think so hopeful for the people who are listening coming up to this, whether they're just having a bad day and they've been in the trades for a while and they're thinking like, screw this, dude, like I just need to get out of this, and your story can give them hope, or whether they're up and coming and they're like, man, that guy, he was in a ditch just like I am right now. and now look at him, and it's so cool. So kind of let's start off there with some of the early successes and failures that you had when you started into that full commission, like full sales, and then obviously transitioning into HVAC as well. What were some of the early mistakes that you made, especially
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't really have a significant amount of background in the sales
Mm-hmm.
presentation other than observational learning and the occasional service call you got tossed? So when you stepped out there and you started doing this, where were the blunders and how did you learn from them?
So I wrote a review, and you guys actually read it on the podcast last year, where it's
Oh,
talked about
sweet.
that I sucked, and I got told no a lot, and rightfully so, because I feel like what everyone with lack of information and skill set comes a very pushy salesperson. Um, and I was just that, very kind of in your face, blunt, no tact about what I said, no tonality. Selling a capacitor, like a 300 something dollar repair, like I couldn't make eye contact with people because
Hmm.
I felt so, I don't even have, I can't even afford it. If I had a home at the time and a capacitor went out, I'm screwed because I didn't have
Mm.
that money, so, um,
Specifically remember those thoughts being early in a selling plumbing role, but like going in with like a water heater swap out quote, I'd just be thinking like, whew, man, good thing like I have a landlord who would
yeah,
have to pay for this
yes,
because I don't have the credit to get approved for the financing, and I don't have. I mean, I don't know. At that time, it was like $800 for a 50-gallon water heater, just which would be a joke now. But
yeah,
but I remember thinking those things. Like I had to work myself up to be like, look, they're not you, right? They're not me, and that's the whole Andrew Dobbins Waste No Day episode. Stop shopping out of your own wallet.
yeah,
But we
literally.
struggle with that as young salespeople. Is this idea that I can't afford it, therefore they can't afford it? Where it's like, well, all right, but let's think about that. They own their own home, right? They got a couple rides in the driveway, and they've owned this home for years, and they've probably planned for these kind of things, and it's a whole different scenario. And they have different priorities than we do, especially if it's, you're young selling tech before you have any kids or anything. Like what a wonderful evening / weekend looks like to these people is going to be so different than what you think of as a wonderful evening and weekend.
Mhm.
A wonderful evening and weekend for me at 46 and my wife and our 4 kids is every appliance in this house works exactly like it's supposed to. The maintenance is up to date on everything. I have nothing to worry about going out at night or on the weekend or while I'm at work, which is just as bad. Well, not quite, but I got to hear about it. Right? So having things well kept and taken care of it's a huge win for me now. But catch me at 24 trying to be out in a truck selling things, and all I could see was this ticket and like how unaffordable it is for me. Therefore, it must be unaffordable for the people I'm dealing with.
Mhm.
They'd be crazy to pay this. So why would they? I wouldn't. I wouldn't do it or couldn't do it at the time. Right. And it's such a horrible mindset that has to be overcome because if you really think about it, if that mindset was accurate, nothing would ever get sold to anyone anywhere, ever. This economy of ours would come screeching to a halt and everything would dry up and we'd all go broke and start eating each other, right?
Mhm.
Everything would just fall apart. We would be decivilized in a matter of weeks. So that's some pretty hardcore negative thinking that has to go.
Mhm.
So I like that you said that and that you had to personally work through that. And it brings me back to being 24 and having to personally work through it, and hopefully speaks to some people who right now are at that crossroads where you have to work through this horrible thinking. And then a couple other things you said. One that I loved and wanted to stop on, but we kept going. You never thought you'd be able to quit drinking. And there are so many layers to that sentence, because I never thought I would get off opiates. It's not just that we don't think we can. We don't think we can exist as a person without that. Like, it's so ingrained in who we are as human beings, as part of our personhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say to people out there who are maybe struggling, maybe full blown, like, I got to get out of this, but maybe just struggling, or maybe you have the feeling that you're a little past the point of dabbling, and you might have a toe or a whole foot or even a leg into the addiction water, and you're just starting to think along these lines. And I'll tell you, not only can you, it will actually be easier than you thought when you get to the other side of it. Yes, Zach?
100%.
And I'll tell you this, forget about who you are and who you don't think you can be without it. There are people that are dying to see the old you in your life. They are praying one day that they'll get to see the you they knew before this thing crept in and started to take over. And the alternative is this thing will take over. This thing will become you, and it won't be a version of you that you or anyone around you will enjoy. So if it's crossing your mind, it's time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's that in and of itself is scary, but you know, again, I feel like that ties a lot into self-imposed limitations, and that's kind of been I felt like my whole life. Sorry, I'm not getting emotional. I was
Sorry,
swallowing on the
cry
wrong
it out,
tube a
cry it
little
out.
bit. I felt like my whole life people told me I had all this potential, and it's like I set out to prove them wrong. It's kind of what it's. If you
You went
look at
the
it,
wrong way to prove
yeah,
people wrong.
yeah. If you look at it from afar, you're like, you know, this is this. I got a friend that's like, you build it up and then you just base jump from the top, dude, with no parachute. And that used to be what I did, and but I feel like the trades also were very good for me because the busier I was and the harder I worked, the more tired I was in the evening. I didn't have time at 3, 4, 5, 6 months sober to even have a thought about drinking because I'm like, I don't have time. I'm too tired to get. I go home. Sometimes I didn't even eat. I got to shower and just go right to bed. And not to mention, you know, how could I do this job hungover? I joke about it on 4th of July, you know, the next day or after Super Bowl or whatever holiday people drink on. And like I can see it in the guys' eyes that come in to work the next morning, and I'm like, I got you beat today because you're like
You ain't you.
40%, dude. And you know, so and you know that for me, I feel like if you allow yourself to really step into who you were meant to be and get out of your own way, like you'll achieve things far beyond your comprehension. I mean, for me, anyways, that's what happened. I never thought I'd own a home, let alone a home like the one I got. I never thought I'd be married and have kids, happily married. You know, I never thought I'd have a career, but I never thought I'd make it on a freaking podcast, especially one that really helped shape and mold me into a person that could look people in the eyes and present things confidently and, you know, have people on there that talked about the things that I was feeling at that time that they had overcome. And like I said, it was like a perfect storm of just good mentorship and positive influence and testimonies, if you will, of people that have come on here that I'm like, hey, they have what I want. And I can tell they've been where I've been because I relate to what they relate to how where I'm at today. They're able to relate to that with their recollection. So
I love your story, Zach, and I love that it's kind of coming full circle for you, man. That's so cool. And thanks for sharing that piece of it. as we kind of jump back into where you were there, you're kind of self-admitting that you weren't very tactful, you weren't very like eye to eye, very your words pushy, so to speak. So obviously you started experiencing some level of financial success, or at least some level of people agreeing whether you beat them into the yes or not.
Mhm.
It started happening, but you're probably also self-aware that this isn't exactly going to have a great outcome if we keep going down this road, or there's going to be a limit as to how far we can go. What were some of the things then you started to like adapt, and how did you start bringing in some of those changes, and what even really drew your awareness to it? I mean, you say now you were pushy. At the time, did you realize that you were pushy, or how did you become aware of that?
Like I said earlier, I feel like lack of skill and knowledge leads to pushiness. And the more reps I got running calls, the more comfortable I got, the more I continued to learn throughout this. I was no longer trying to convince someone that they need or persuade them that they needed something. I was able to educate them and explain to them, this is what happened, this is what caused it, and this is what we need to do to fix it. And then here are the options we can do to fix it. From Band-Aid to complete, you're worry free. You're not worrying about this for the foreseeable future. Um, when I was able to convey that to them, um, that's when things kind of started really turning around. Um, but it wasn't until, if anybody thinks that they can BS their way through it without bumping their head, like, I mean, maybe my hat's off to you if you can. But for me, it was a lot of, I've always been hypercritical of myself. It was a lot of sitting in the van after the call, and I'm like, you idiot. I could, like, let me tell you where you went wrong, kind of replaying each call. And I'll hyperfixate on something over and over and over and over and over to where I won't usually make the same mistake again.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll say often, like with the note to self notebook, I think I learned pretty early on that if I got out to my truck and my pen was writing on my notepad to say, here are the things you did wrong, I was one who would kind of stay focused on that, and even let that bleed into the next call, the very next call, not even the next one that was like that call. And I moved it into a place where it was like, where it became, would, let's say, our mutual friend Brent Buckley have sold this call?
mm,
And the answer is like, of course he would. He's
yeah,
Brent, right?
duh.
Yeah. Heck, even back then when he was a $2 million guy. And then, and it would just say, how? And I wouldn't call him. I would just sit there and think through it myself. How would it sell? Okay. And I would maybe have to use Lance, my mentor, or Brent, or Tom Hopkins, or Brian Tracy's personality. Like I'd shift into their personality as I thought about how they would do it and what they would have said and done differently from what I did. But so I did it a little bit differently, and then I would write it down what I thought, and then I would think how I could implement that myself with my own personality, or even chameleon slightly into taking Brent's tone, which is, as Nate got to find out in person this morning as Brent's at their shop training,
That's what he was
a
telling me.
very it's a very low key, monotone, unassuming. He's not the slightest bit aggressive or abrasive. Just a laid
Always,
back.
he's hey, I'm not. That's kind
Yeah.
of his. If you ever watch
Yeah,
him
he's like
like role play,
anti
that's what he does.
pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could shift into that mindset a bit, focusing on what should have been done, not beating myself up with what I did wrong, because for some reason, the more I thought about it or wrote about what I did wrong, the more I would take it into the very next call and do the same thing somewhat subconsciously. So I always recommend focusing on what should have been done, not what we did wrong. But regardless of which way you're doing it, I think the key is that we're reflecting and that we're jumping into the truck and getting down the road a bit or wherever and spending a few minutes with the notepad, not TikTok, unless you're watching blue collar closer videos, then dig in because that's going to help you too, right? Not Instagram, not social, not catching up on your JO buddies nonsense in the football game or whatever. But like everything aside, notepad, ink pen, that client you just left, what went really well if it sold? How did you do it? How could you replicate it? How could you train it if you had an apprentice in your passenger seat? Like what notes could you give him to say like, this is how that happened? And if I hadn't done this right here, it wouldn't have happened, right? And really hyping yourself up and giving yourself credit, but then jotting down the notes of how it worked. And if it didn't work, how could it have worked? And if they failed financing and they couldn't come up with the funds, don't worry about that one, right? Maybe think about how you could have gotten a pic or video review, which you should have done. And then on to the next one. And just do this every call and reflect and reflect and reflect and unpack on paper. And what happens is this programming, whether you do it Zach's way or my way, which is you're not repeating the things that made you go sideways. Like you might do it again on the next call that's like this one, or maybe 2 or 3 after that. But eventually you're going to filter out or funnel down all these behaviors that you see are the issue, and you're going to stop doing them. And you're going to replace that time with behaviors that you think, according to you and your notepad, would have sold this call, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the refining process of burning off the impurities and leaving only the gold, the pure steel that's going to forge into something amazing, right? A weapon. So whichever way you're going to do it, reflect. What is it? Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. God, one of those old dudes, right? The unexamined call is not worth running. Unless you just know that this is your last year in a truck or whatever. It's like, go nuts. Fine. Do whatever you want to do. But if you just hop yourself into the driver's seat, close the door, pick up that half full bottle of Monster that's warm and chug a lug, hit your vape pen, and off you go to the next one, music up as loud as you can get it. It's like you live your life, I guess. I mean, so it's your day, but there is a better version of you on the other side of the things that we've talked about. And we could end this episode right now, and all everyone takes from it is this examining your post call, right? What do we want to call this? Your post game, right? Your game film, whatever, is doing this, some version of this where you sit down and take notes and chop up the call in this way. And this is enough for a whole episode. And if this is the only thing people take, then there's more than enough. Now, it's not going to be enough because I want to hear how Zach goes in there his first full year and HVAC sales and comes out with $4 million in revenue. And I want to hear this broken down a bit, but I'm telling you, that's enough. And you don't need anything else. You don't need another Waste No Day episode. You don't need Blue Collar Closer. You don't need sales books, other sales trainers. This would be enough to guarantee you will be successful on a long enough timeline. And it's not going to be that long. Now, where Waste No Day and Blue Collar Closer and our other presentation training friends and audiobooks and podcasts and YouTube videos comes in is they will shorten the timeline. Mm-hmm. Right? So maybe you're a guy like me who takes several years to get really good by trial and error and audiobooks and seminars because I had to build the process that works on a home services maintenance call from scratch because it didn't exist. Maybe that's 3 or 4 years for you, like it probably was for me. But now we have a Waste No Day podcast you can listen to every week. Thank you for listening, because if you're hearing this, you're listening. We have bluecollarcloser.com, where you can get in there and see one that's pre-built in a classroom, courses that are 5 to 12 minutes long with exercises to make sure you get up in there and learn it, right? Live calls, 4 live calls a week. And then people posting videos of themselves role playing in the group all week, and everyone giving feedback and hyping each other up for our wins and helping each other out with our losses, and giving instruction on somebody can just post, here's what happened on a call. I like when they do it on video better, because it's a lot to read, especially at a red light. Not that I would ever open my phone in the car, but yeah, so we'll read, people will lay their story out, man. We'll get up in there and read the story. And next thing you know, you got 25 comments on this thing of people giving you what they think would turn this call, or a first person story of they ran this same type of call and this actually turned it. And you personally have all these answers to your question, and you get to sift through them and decide which ones are the baby and which ones are the bathwater, right? Or you can just go try every single one of them. That's your prerogative, but it's a big leg up in an industry like this, and a community of 350 people from around the world trying to do the same thing as you, which is become the best on their team, in their neighborhood, in the nation, at doing what we do, and make the kind of money in the time that we have left to do this, however long that is, however long we're blessed to stay on this planet, or however long until AI starts moving in on a lot of this type of stuff. But we have a short window to make as much money as possible, and these kind of things will shorten the time it's going to take to get there, right? We all got the same goal, hopefully. Put our family up in as good of a situation and as set up a future as humanly possible in the short amount of time we have to do that.
So let's transition into that then, Zach, as you have been slogging your way through, kind of beating your head a little bit against the bricks on the sales side of things and trial and erroring your way to success. Was there a moment in time where things clicked for you, or did you just slowly evolve into more and more success along the way?
I think I don't, it's always an overnight thing, right? When, um, when you realize what it is, but, it was definitely a gradual, and I think everyone's timeline is different, but it was a gradual thing for me, not as drawn out as I feel like I've heard others, but not as fast as I've heard some of others either, where they just kind of picked up and took off with it. But um, I think I just got to a point where I had enough confidence in myself, um, and realized that not everyone's going to say yes. Um, but the more consistent I am, the more disciplined I am in my process, regardless of what my head's telling me, um, is when I started seeing less dips in my, I guess, if you looked at it on a linear uh, format, there was less dips and more, yeah. Kind of like an inverter, more like this, where a single stage is more, yeah. But anyway, so um, for me, I think the biggest thing was just working hard at it and I found out that the better job I did for each customer on each call, the better my results were. So if the better I cleaned the condenser, the better I vacuumed it out, the better I hosed it down, the better I blew it out with my leaf blower, like the clean the condenser pad, pull the cage off the outside of the condenser if there's leaks between the cage and the cool. The better I wipe down the furnace, whatever the case is, the better job I did, the better my results were. Um, because I feel like you can throw a rock, especially here in Vegas, throw a rock and hit a technician that'll come in there and tell you need a new unit. Um, but how can you be different? And that's when I met Brent, that's kind of what he started. I realized that there's levels to this. Because he's ran calls with me, and this dude turns a $70,000 ticket in 30 minutes, and I'm like, how the, I'm like, to me, I'm very like, I refuse to spend less than an hour, hour and a half on a call because I'm very, very, but this dude is just, so when I started seeing that it could be done and started getting input from him on how to do things, how to say things, um, when to pull back. I feel like pulling back is probably the biggest asset to my process, aside from just doing a good job and being very thorough. Um, is some homeowners aren't dumb, especially in a very pressured market. You go to a 25-year-old unit, you can bet your hind end you're not the first person to tell them they should get a new one. So, how many times will a homeowner show you their throat, so to speak, and expect you to go for it like everybody else so they can say you're just like every other technician, and they write you off and there's no more engagement throughout the call, and they're very dismissive. Thank you for your time. Have a good day. Um, so that's one thing. And Brent jokes about it. He's like, you're like the king of pulling back. I've almost lost deals from pulling back so much where they're like, well, okay, maybe I don't need to replace it. I'm like, oh, well, no, let's let's pump the brakes there. This thing's rough, but you know, if I go there, and if someone's like, I know it's old, I need a new one. I already know. Who said you need a new one? Let me just run through it. A lot of people get told they need a new one, and it's really just a minor repair or something. Let me see what I can do to kick the can down the road on this and get some more time out of it. Kind of preserve and maintain is my mindset. And with that mindset, you're either going to leave with a repair, you're going to leave with a replacement, but no matter what you leave with, you're going to leave a good impression because you weren't there trying to take advantage. You weren't there trying to manipulate the situation. Um, it is what it is. Not every call's a deal, but knowing that the more knowledge you get, the more you can kind of tie things together. Like Brent jokes about, he does training at our shop, and um, guys will be like, it's a 2-year-old system. What do you want me to do with that? And Brent's like, well, I could put together 6 options on things to improve that system, and he's serious because he has the knowledge and the experience to do that. Um, so that's really where I'd say I started selling in July of 24. Um, and that was just kind of, I was just thrown into it because um, we had a technician that was supposed to work Saturday, and he had called off that day, and there was, I don't know, 7, 8 calls on the board, and um, I ended up selling like 2 out of the 7 or something like that, like 50 something thousand, and they were like, oh, well, he got lucky. Well, then Sunday, the other technician that was supposed to work on Monday, I was supposed to be off Sunday, Monday. He dropped a transmission on his hand, so he couldn't come into work Monday. So like, hey, can you run calls Monday too? And I like to work, I was like, all right, sure, whatever. And I think I sold like another 30 something, 35, 36,000 that day.
Hmm.
And that's
Wow.
really where those 2 days really, I would say, were the starting point of like, because I would just wanted to sell stuff. So I was a lead installer. I'd worked up to lead installer. I just wanted to sell stuff to install. I didn't care about selling it. I didn't think nothing about selling it per se. As I was like, yes, I got a double to install tomorrow. Or whatever the day it was getting installed. I knew I had work. I had secured work for me to do on the back end. And those 2 technicians ended up leaving the company, and I became the one technician and kind of, I worked 7 days a week. Had running, I was triple, quadruple booked every time slot, just fighting for my life. And that's kind of where it really took off. So about a year and a half in was where I really kind of was like, okay, I got a future in this, hopefully. Um, but again, doubt will still try to creep in. Um, I did right under 700,000 in like 7 weeks there. Um, then I ended up, Brent reached out, I reached out to Brent. Brent was like, hey, I got an opportunity for you, just hang tight. And I'm nervous to leave the company I was at because I'd started from the ground up there. And I was like, what if I was just a flash in the pan? What
Mm,
if,
yeah.
what if I go there and, you're not supposed to put people on a pedestal, but, was and still is to this day, Brent is up there. For me personally, we became friends now. We hang out outside of work and stuff, and I still, you know, admire him for his achievements and honestly, who he is as a person. He's a good dude. He really cares. He really gives a crap about the next generation. And when I came to work here, I was again faced like I was February that year, scared to death. Like, what if I go here and I just flop, and I had I was like, hey, can you give me? It was like a $1,400 a week guarantee. I was like, could you give me a guarantee to come here? And he was like, brother, if you're making $1,400, you better go back to installing. You're not going to work here. And so I was like, all right, yeah. So that was November of 24, and that's really where things were kind of gradually going up, but it kind of skyrocketed in November, and and then 2025, of course, every milestone I hit, I posted it in the Waste No Day group because I was proud, I was like, I hit a million before it hit 100 degrees outside, and I guess that was good. I didn't, I just put my head down and wanted to make Brent proud, not to sound corny about it, but um, there was jobs where my head was telling me like, oh, I done came up with 3, 4 reasons why it wasn't going to sell. And Brent texted me back, I really liked this call. I expect a big ticket. And I'm like, oh, all right, dude. And so the self-imposed limitations, Brent was really good at pushing me out of my own way. Um, and there's been a lot of people that I've seen him do that with that didn't, nothing bad as a person, they just didn't necessarily rise to the occasion. But for me, I think fear of judgment and of letting him down or disappointing him really pushed me beyond anything I thought was imaginable. I remember hearing people on your podcast, Coral Well, what you do, like 2 point something million, and I was like, I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, wow, that's that's crazy. I never even thought I'd hit a million. Um, and then I just kept kind of chunking away at it and hit a million, then 2 million. My daughter was born. I missed like a month out of the summer, in and out of the hospital with her. So even when I was at work, I wasn't, she has a feeding tube and a tube down her. No, it was just IVs on her arms. I didn't know what was going to happen. And I kind of found relief in work, and in a process because it was it allowed me to kind of unplug for a second, if you will.
Mm,
Um, and I think that really helped push my discipline because the last thing I'm thinking about on the call is the call when my wife's texting me that they're having to do this, that, or the third with my daughter, doing this test on her, and um, so kind of hunkering down on no matter what, like you gotta do your job and do it correctly if you want results. And I'm a very result driven person, um, and last year was, yeah, I had some really big accomplishments, but last year was a there was a lot of days where when I made it home at night, my win for the day was I was sober that day. I went to bed sober. That was the only
mm,
win I had. No matter the deals I got or whatever, like it didn't really matter at that time. Um, so I my biggest thing, I guess you could say, is no matter what life throws at you, because it's going to, stay disciplined, stay the process, trust God, find a mentor and trust them, um, and you'll achieve things you didn't think you could possibly achieve.
Yeah, it's so good, Zach. And I want to reflect upon something that you kind of mentioned earlier, which is like the art of the pullback, or Sandler sales would say, like the art of the takeaway. And it seems like that has been kind of a pivotal strategy in your success, and how you found things with almost being the anti-push, right? Like you started your journey off as being, your words, very pushy, and now you've gone to your, again, your words, so far to the other direction that almost you lose some things. So, like, describe for us a little bit about what that takeaway or that pullback looks like, or sounds like, or feels like, and then how are you balancing that with, what the client really should do, or what is best for them, or how are you positioning that within your presentation that it works so well?
I feel like if there's an acronym I like, is MOF HOF, make a friend, help a friend. So if you make a friend by building rapport during the call, at the end, you're really not selling them, you're helping them. You're helping a friend. Like, how would you, there's things that I could say, if I haven't built any rapport, there's things I could say, like, what are we doing here? That if I didn't build that rapport, they're like, well, I don't know. I'll tell you what you're doing, getting the hell out of my house. But so if I'm presenting something to something, like I clean the condenser, right? I always make sure to, can you mind showing me where the condenser is? Because I want to bring them out and I want to get them to, I always look down in the unit, and majority of the time, even maintenance is out here. Most people just hose the coil down and like, all right, yep, looks good.
Dude,
Um,
when you do a legit maintenance and you really make that thing look brand new, even the parts the client will never see. Aside from what you said, the win that tends to come on the sale, bigger sale, longer relationship, or what have you, don't you just feel like $1 million walking away from that thing?
I always, for me, by me doing a good job, it allows me to look people in the eyes and with intention, and know that you can only BS so much through stuff. Um, but I know that being able to look them in the eyes and be like, hey, come check out your unit. Like this, you seen what it looked like before. I want you to see what it looks like now. Um, and they're always very elated, most of the time.
Hmm.
And there's the people
Yeah.
that are like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. But they're like, oh my God, it looks brand new. Like, yeah, I know. I try to do a good job. Um, you know, I, not saying I found like a condenser fan motor leaking. Hey, I happen to notice while I had the system open, because most time you got it propped up, the motor's leaking oil, and they're like, "Oh, does that need to be replaced?" I'm like, probably, but let me finish running through everything, and I'll kind of touch base with you when I'm done with this, and then I'll hop up in the attic, and then I'll be out of your way for the day. So I'm never really insinuating that we're gonna have a full come to Jesus meeting about the unit, but I'm touching base throughout the call, couple check-ins throughout the call to A, kind of get a feel for where they're at. Um, but B, they're selling and closing themselves. So like the objection handling thing, like I don't really get a lot of objections, because I feel like if you run a solid process, like they've kind of closed themselves, you've answered them along the way, and um, I look at it like there's like a Hope Diamond in the middle in the cartoons, and they got like 100,000 laser beams everywhere, and you're like bobbing and weaving and get to the prize jewel in the
What was a
middle.
what was a movie back in the day with like Catherine Zeta-Jones where
Entrapment.
Entrapment, yeah, and then of course Mission Impossible had a
Mission
version
Impossible,
of
yeah.
it too. But we need a new movie that the kids listening to this will have seen, right? Where they're going through the lasers, because those don't really exist anymore.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so I think that um, providing evidence without, I'm just like, hey, I'm just gonna drop this off right here, and I'm gonna go on about my business here. I'll turn my back on a homeowner sometimes. Like, all right, they just keep, well, what about this? Well, I'm just gonna finish up my maintenance here. I'll touch base with you. Um, I don't really go into selling them anything because I want them to, in today's market, it has to be the buyer's idea. And I fully believe that. Um, because if you're trying to sell them your idea, you know, from my experience, I don't usually leave with a ticket of any stature. So, you know, rusted coils, for example, in the attic, like it's fairly common, especially on like an Aspen BB coil. Um, I'm like, hey, when's the last time you had maintenance done on this thing? And tell me whenever. I'm like, oh, so you know about the coil that's rusting out in the attic? And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, your evaporator coil is part two of the AC, absorbs heat from the home. They're like, no. And I show them a picture. And I'm big on showing them, like on an iPhone, especially you can hit the info button at the bottom and it timestamps it, the time and where it was at. There's a lot of tomfoolery that goes on, that I've heard stories about. So I just try to be as transparent as possible, um, and
It is
providing.
great now with the technology that didn't exist even when Brent and I were working together back in '04 and on. But the idea that I could be up in that coil and take my phone and just hit record on video selfie and say, hey, Zach and Nate, I'm here upstairs. I'm gonna come down and I'm gonna show you this right here. I just want to get a little video of it first and make sure you see what I'm
Mhm.
talking about. And then walk downstairs and show them the video of you upstairs saying their name in the evap coil or whatever it is that
Mhm.
we're
Yeah.
showing them. And these days, they don't have to take your word for much. Now, our word should be enough, but like you said, these these unfortunate stories exist. I was on a I was part of a sting
I've heard
operation.
about this. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a TikTok video going around, a couple TikTok videos going around, but where they had just the P-trap nut was loosened up and slid up the pipe on a kitchen sink, and then the washer was also slid. And I'm talking about like my whole hand could have fit between the trap arm and the and where the nut and washer were slid up to, and then there was just a big old pot underneath it, and these two young ladies saying that there's a leak, and I'm like, well, yeah, because somebody disconnected the P trap, slid the nut and washer way up there, and they're like, no, it was just dripping. I'm like, no, somebody did that. Like that had to
Yeah.
be done. And she's like, nobody's been down there. And I'm like, okay. Well, I tighten it back up and I fill the bowl and unplug it and run the disposal. You just everything you can to make
Yeah.
sure as much water goes through as possible. And there's no drip or anything. I'm like, if you say so, but make sure nobody gets down there and screws around. And I offered some services like, let me go ahead and flush the water heater out, pull the sacrificial rod, check your temperature and pressure relief valve and everything else. And they quickly declined and scurried me out of the house. But later on, I would come into the shop for the morning meeting, and the owner and manager would put on the screen for the meeting that there was this sting at this house, and they showed, I'm telling you, I don't know, 15 dudes, all ages, all shapes and sizes. Like we always want to draw a picture of what the con man in our industry looks like. This dude didn't have a uniform. This, I'm telling you, it was young, good looking, like, squared away cats that look like they're fresh out of the military. And it was your old scraggly, roughneck technicians that have been in the trade 40 years. And when they hear about sales training, literally the first one. It's always the most crooked
Yep.
dude on earth who's the first one in the comments to say that all salesmen are crooks and blah, 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 blah. It was them. They were the worst. They were also the ones hitting on the girls. They had their wedding ring on and everything. And it was a handful of companies that they played at the end that they said some companies did the right thing, and they just showed the name of the companies, and our company was one of them. And I'm sitting there like elbowing the dude next, maybe Brent, I don't know, elbowing the dude next to me like, bro, that's me. I was there. And then, yeah, Ken Goodrich was the owner, and he came in and dropped an envelope full of $100 bills on the table in front of me, and everybody gave me a round of applause. I know I turned this into a me story, but why not? You know, it's my opportunity. But yeah, it was just to show that no shape or size mattered. There were at least a dozen people who went in there on camera and tried to tell these girls that they needed a new sink, they needed a repipe, they needed all new drain lines in the house. I mean, everything short of the water heater was leaking, right? But everything you can imagine was trying to be sold in this house for what needed to be a nut tightened up. And that's literally all there was. So unfortunately, there are enough crooks in our industry, in every industry. It doesn't matter if they're selling in it or not. There are just people who will, get rich or die trying. Like they'll do anything it takes to make a couple bucks. Their name doesn't really mean anything to them, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately to that part because I'm someone who's overcome the destruction of my own name and my own brand in addiction, and come through it and gotten to the point where I can have some self-respect again. And I have a wife and kids who are most of the time proud of me. Depends on how much they're getting out of me at that moment. I mean, and like a community of people who respect me and people who know that I got a sketchy past and it is what it is, but still you will get to a point if you work diligently enough that this name of yours that doesn't mean much to you today, it will in time, but not if you're willing to take any shortcut and screw anyone over to get the smallest leg up on your situation in the moment. Yeah. Because like one dude was adamant that the garbage disposal needed to be replaced. And I remember he was the worst because, at that time, 2005, whatever it was, for garbage disposal was like $460. And he's telling her a $400 disposal. And the dude's just throwing it all away for $400. And what was his commission on this thing? Let's just go way out on a limb and say it was 20%. Yeah. Although we know it wasn't that much. $80, bro. Yep. Like you're throwing it all away for four $20 bills. And it's like, one day your name will mean a lot more than that. Mm-hmm. And right in this moment, you're letting that go for the, sacrificing what you want most for what you want now, which is essentially the epitome of, or the definition of foolishness, I guess. Like the inability to delay gratification and actually make something of yourself. But yeah, if there are any listening, I doubt those folks listen to Waste No Day.
Yeah, probably not.
They're listening to MSNBC News or something.
Yeah. CNN.
Yeah. No, they don't listen to this show.
Well, Zach, you're making a name for yourself, man, and so proud of you for $4 million of sales. That's fantastic. I think you're going to do great things. And as we wrap things up today, I have 3 questions for you to kind of take us out on. The first one is a little self-serving, but because you mentioned that you've kind of come up a little bit under the tutelage of Waste No Day, and you've heard some things that that have driven you. Just kind of curious, like what's 1 or 2 of your favorite episodes that really stood out?
I've listened to all of Brent's, obviously, multiple times. Phil Fulasky had a really good one.
Yeah, for sure.
Coral Wells was a good one. Um,
Good three.
I just went blank here, but guys that I don't recall their name,
Nate Minnick.
but yeah, but I mean, if I pull up my Apple Podcast right now, I could scroll through and probably find five up,
Yeah.
six up
Well,
that I was like, oh, that one was a banger for sure.
tell us about that. Tell us about the episodes. Like what stuck out. I bet you we can come up with it. I
Um,
think Adam Holbein out of Ohio was probably one that would click
what's
with
his
you
name?
quite a
Sam
bit.
Wakefield was a good
Oh
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sam. Yeah, close it now.
Yeah,
He's got a podcast as
Sam
well.
Wakefield. You put me on the spot, man. I just drew blank.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Let's
That's
just
great.
sit and wait, bro. Nate, let's just let it go. Bro.
You
Make him
rattled
come up
off
with
a
everyone.
bunch there, Zach, man, and those
You
are all
guys can just
super episodes.
press plus 30. I don't care.
Yeah.
We're gonna sit here all night.
All right, so the second question, Zach, a little bit more serious because you mentioned you've battled your way through some addictions, and I think I would describe it as you specialized in self-sabotage,
Mm.
if I could be so bold. And you mentioned that, somebody told you like, dude, you just build it up and then you jump off the top of the thing without a parachute. So there's probably some people listening that have that same tendency. And every time they start sniffing success, they just find a way to smack it back down and self-sabotage. So speak to that person listening and how you broke that cycle and what they could do to do the same.
Well, I guess it really depends on why you're doing it. What is it that you are afraid of? Um, I feel like a lot of mine was, it looked like fear of success, but I feel like it was probably more fear of failure after achieving success. Um, when I finally quit caring so much about what everyone else thought of me and I cared more about what I thought of me, um, what my wife thought of me, what if I seen someone in an Albertsons parking lot, and they were a customer of mine, would they want to come say hi? Um, if it was my mother that someone was running a call for, how would I want them to treat her? Um, when I finally started doing what I knew was right in my gut, whether or not there was a paycheck involved with it, things started kind of working out. Um, so if anyone's like building it up and tearing it down, like put the bat down. Like you ain't got to beat yourself up, dude. Like, if you're like me, no one's gonna beat you up worse than yourself. Um, understand that you're human. You're a flawed human. We all are. You screwed up. Okay, cool. You screwed up a dozen times, 100 times. Like me, too many times to count. Tomorrow, literally, it sounds cliche, but tomorrow is a new day. And you get to decide what kind of ending your story has, what you are remembered by, what kind of characteristics people would explain, you know, what people would characterize you as if you weren't in the room. And the beautiful thing about it is, as much as we can destroy that, we can establish that. Um, if you ain't got a relationship with God or a higher power, whatever you want to call it, get one. I promise, because you are not God. The world does not revolve around you. Um,
Oh, it was your Wiser Wednesday. We were talking a little bit about that.
yeah.
Right? I think it
Um,
was Spurgeon, the Prince of Preachers, who said
mhm, yeah.
the biggest problem the atheist has with believing in God is starting with the belief that he's not
Mhm,
God.
yeah. Um, but
Good point to make, buddy. Good
I
point to
just
make.
at the end of the day, I think you have to you have to look at you. You have to lay down at night and close your eyes and deal with you. Um, and if you have a hard time doing that, if there's things about you that you don't like, great. You get to change it. And only you can change it. Um, when I first got sober, they told me that, good news is you're the problem. Bad news is you're the problem.
You're the problem. Yeah,
So,
that's good. All right, so last one for you, Zach. You mentioned at the beginning that a lot of people have given to you, and you would like to give back, I believe. And then you've also mentioned that in your journey specifically, there was people who you found to be uniquely placed in your timeline to direct you in a certain way that was good. As you wrap up the podcast in this episode for us today, I'm asking you to be that person for somebody listening right now and give them some advice or give back to them in some way. Maybe they're in a ditch right now listening to this thing, or maybe they're driving and just kind of thinking through what this next call could be and how they really don't feel like being here and they're on the edge of kind of calling it quits. How would you be that person for them to make a difference in their life right now?
Assuming you're not getting raided by the feds right now.
No.
Sirens in the back.
I'm right by the 215 here.
Welcome to Vegas.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good one. I would say that, be the kind of person, that is proud of who they are and what they do. Anytime you take a shortcut, you're shortchanging yourself. It's chess, not checkers. So you're not gonna get, it's not gonna end overnight, but it can either be, what do they say, one day or day one. One day you can get it together. Maybe if you're lucky enough to live that long, you might, God forbid, you might die in a car crash on the way home and never got it right. Or you can say, you know what, today I'm going to start doing something better. And if you fall off at the end of the day, cool. Well, hey, the first 3 hours, I did really good today. The last seven, not so much, but tomorrow I'll shoot for four. And I feel like give yourself grace, because the the finished product, quote unquote, finished product you see presented to you by people, you don't know how they got to become that finished product unless they just openly share it. But I would be willing to bet it was not an easy road, and there was probably a lot of error along the way too. Um, Make mistakes, but don't dwell on them. And I've been guilty of that, but make mistakes and learn from them. I don't learn the first time by doing it the right way. I learn by doing it 5 times the wrong way, and I'm like, all right, well, let's pump the brakes and do it the right way. So if you're new to this, it gets better. It can't last. You can't stay an apprentice forever unless you choose to. Again, it's your choice. But show up and literally work your ass off and put your head down, and you're eventually going to look up and you're going to be like, where the hell am I? How did I get here? And it'll seem like it happened overnight. But I can tell you the pride that comes from knowing that you did it the hard way, the right way, the honest way. I can look anyone in the eyes and know that I've given it everything I've had. I continue to give it everything I have. And if you do that, you can feel the same way.
Well, Zach Reynolds, you're doing a lot of things the right way. It's very apparent, and I hope that our listeners have appreciated that today. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode and coming full circle for you. We hope to have you on again sometime in the future when you exceed that $4 million and keep posting those records, man. But we appreciated everything you had to bring to us today.
Thank you guys for having me on. It was an honor. Keep listening to the Waste No Day podcast. It'll change your career. Find a good mentor.
It's a great place to leave it. And we hope that you did enjoy the episode. If you did, let Zach know. And you can find him in the Waste No Day Facebook group, and you can reach out to him in other ways, I'm sure. But he would love to hear from you. Of course, if you enjoyed this episode and you had some takeaways, we'd love to hear from you too. You can drop us a review or let us know in the Blue Collar Closer group or in the Facebook group. We'd love to hear your feedback, and share this one around, as I'm sure there's some people who could take some inspiration from Zach, whether it be the takeaway or whether it be stepping away from a self-destructive lifestyle and really being real and sincere and getting yourself on the right track, doing the good things that he is. So we're going to leave you now with our weekly challenge, which continues to be the same: to choose to wake up each and every morning and waste no day.